Tucson is a town that shouldn't exist. And in fact, without air conditioning, it wouldn't exist. The best thing about Tucson is the weather, and it's also the worst thing. 8 months out of the year, the weather is absolutely beautiful because we get very little rain. And when it's not summer, it's just super pleasant to be around. Right now it's January and the temperature today is going to get up to about 70. That's not atypical. The problem is there's no water anywhere. There's no river that goes through Tucson. It doesn't rain very often in Tucson. We get about 10 inches a year if we're lucky. That makes for a lot of great weather to be around. You get to go places. You don't usually worry about whether or not it's going to rain. But from a resource standpoint, there's not enough water here. It's not even close. We've been tapping our water resources for years. We just tend to ignore the fact that it's getting lower and lower. Now, if you live in Tucson, you at least are pretty intelligent about using your water. We don't have a bunch of green grass lawns. Even a lot of our parks are desert landscaped, although there are a lot of golf courses and other green areas. It's a really great place to live, except that we shouldn't be here. Beyond the lack of water, the temperatures in the summer are just ridiculously high. 100-degree temperature is going to happen pretty much every day in the summer, and 110 is going to happen several times. It's not as bad as Phoenix, where 110 is really their average on a summer day, but it's still pretty bad, and at least Phoenix can claim it has a river. Now, we call a couple of the things here rivers, the Rito River, the Santa Cruz River. They're not rivers. They're dry 90% of the time. The only time one of these rivers is going to see any water is in the summer. Yeah, in the summer, that rain, especially in July and August, can come down like a torrent. It just washes everything out. People get stuck in their cars. Cars get washed away. It's just horrifically bad weather in the summer. You know, it's either too hot or it's raining like hell. We got lucky this July. The temperatures weren't super bad and we got lighter rain. It made it for a very odd summer because all of a sudden it got very, very green here, which we're not used to. Green is a color you don't see a lot of in Tucson. If you do, it's a really pale or not particularly attractive green. Some of the great things about living in Tucson is that the food here is really good. There's a lot of variety. There's a lot of places to eat. There's a lot of ethnic food that you can try. We're pretty good about that. It's a great place for eating. The university here is a great university. We have some pretty good sports teams. The basketball team's always pretty close to the top. The football team is usually terrible, but every once in a while gets really good. We had a nice stretch in the 90s where we were almost a great team. It's been a while. Right now, the team is in the midst of these massive losing streaks. And to be honest, nobody really pays attention because the only team that they really follow is the basketball team, which is doing great right now. There's a lot of great outdoor sports to be had in Tucson, especially bicycling. We have what's called the Loop, which is an 88-mile circuit all around the city. We're reasonably good about bike lanes for America. If you're from anywhere else, especially like the Netherlands, you're going to think it's pathetic. But for America, we've got really good bike lanes. One of the other odd things about Tucson is that we don't really have a crosstown freeway. We have Interstate 10, which goes through the outskirts on the western and the southern sides of Tucson, and Interstate 19, which branches off of 10 and goes down to Nogales. But neither of those really is going to take you across town. For the most part, you're going to be on service streets all the time. And that's what you should just get used to doing. Now, a lot of people think that's a downside, but in the end, it's really a pretty good upside for Tucson. You're not constantly having to look at these giant, ugly freeway structures. The funny part of this is that a lot of people who've only seen Tucson from the freeway think it's a lot less attractive than it is because the freeway doesn't cut through the best parts of town. The best parts of town are far, far removed from where the freeway is. And that's usually going to be the north side. That's where a lot of the really expensive houses are and a lot of the nicer landscapes and the parks. There's good stuff midtown. Reed Park is a really good park to go to, take your family and spend time. The nightclub scene here, I'm a little old for, so I'm not going to promote too much, but because there's a university here, there is a nightlife. There are bars that are open and there are, bands that come to town. I have a lot of really cool artwork around town that just springs up out of nowhere, especially on the southern side of town and near the university. Those are some great places to live if you wanted to live a little bit less of a cookie cutter house sort of thing. The east side of town is nice. I grew up on the east side. The neighborhood is aging a bit now. Most of the houses built in the 1950s and the 1960s through the 1970s until you get to the far east side, and then you've got a lot of new construction, especially along a Houghton Road. There's a community there called Savannah, which is really good about being a green space area and having a lot of environmental touches. People really like it there. And then you get out on the outskirts of town, there's another little community called Vale. I lived in Vale for a bit. There's not as many resources out there, so you're going to have a harder time finding a place to eat or drink, but it's really beautiful. The houses there are very nice. And that's the thing, is Tucson's real estate, we've gone up a bunch. The house I'm in, we recently bought for $330,000. It's about 2,600 square feet, 5-bedroom. It's a nice house, but that's about the median price you're paying for a reasonable house to live in right now. It's about $300,000. I mean, this same subdivision just 5 years ago was selling for $200,000. So outdoor sports are really big here. We have Mount Lemmon, which is a nice mountain. Gets some snow in the winter, but overall it's usually pretty pleasant there. It's even in the summer, it's running about 70 degrees. We have technically a ski resort, but most years it doesn't open just because there's just not enough snow. But it's a great place to hike and view. Same with Sabino Canyon. Sabino Canyon is a great place to go for a hike, and it's got a great view. Job-wise, Tucson is not the greatest. Pay here is usually a little bit below national average. There's not a ton of tech jobs, which is where I work. We've got a couple of major employers. IBM and Intuit are some of the bigger tech companies here. Honeywell's also got a place up in Oro Valley, which is just north of Tucson. But overall, there's a lot of tourist jobs. There's a lot of resorts. There's a lot of restaurants. There's a lot of spas. Those are not high-paying jobs, but there are a lot of those sort of jobs here. Quite a lot of food and bar scene here, so that there's plenty of jobs in that area. Tucson is also known as a major call center, so there's thousands of call center jobs. Not too much over minimum wage, so they're not the world's best jobs. The university is a reasonably big employer, as are some of the hospitals. So if you're in that area, you're probably going to be able to find something. But if you're looking for high-paying corporate jobs, Tucson's probably not going to be your place. We don't attract major businesses. We don't have a lot of big company headquarters here in Tucson. If you're looking for that sort of thing and you still want the same sort of area, you should probably go to Phoenix. Phoenix has a lot of corporate headquarters and a lot of major plants. Intel is very big up there. There's 1 million people in the metro area, in the Pima County area, but Tucson itself is only about 300,000 to 400,000 people. So yeah, we have all the conveniences. We also have the Air Force Base, and the Air Force Base and Hughes aircraft were a big reason why Tucson grew in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s. If you're looking for jobs in the military industrial complex, there are a few of those. Really, job-wise, it's a mixed bag, and you're not going to get rich here working a job. That's just not going to happen. On the plus side, we've got a really nice downtown. It didn't used to be, but over the past 10 years, it's been rebuilt. And there's a lot of really great things. There's a lot of resources for children here. The Children's Museum here is quite nice. As I said, there's a lot of parks. We've got the Tucson Boys Chorus, which is world-renowned. And while our public schools aren't necessarily the best, there's a lot of good charter schools here, especially Basis is a very high-performing school here. And the Vale School District is actually very well-regarded. Community I'm living in, which technically is in the Vale School District, it has parks and it has some nice things for kids. You really need to take a look at the schools. As far as shopping and movies go, we have a lot of movie theaters. We have a lot of shopping malls. The best theater in town, if you're not looking for the latest Marvel movie, is the Loft. It's a nonprofit theater. It runs foreign movies and other independent films. It's got 3 screens, 4 if you count the outdoor. And it's a great place to see a movie, and they really care about movies there. So it's at the top of my list. We also have a nice place called Roadhouse Cinemas. It's that kind of experience where you get to sit in a recliner and have food brought to you. But there's lots of choices there, and it's a great experience. If you're a movie lover, Tucson is a pretty good town to be in. We also shoot a lot of movies here. We're a fairly common movie set. Old Tucson is still out there, although technically Old Tucson is kind of new Old Tucson because Old Tucson burned down a few years back and they rebuilt it. So it's not quite as historical as it used to be, but it's still a great place for a movie set and for people to do things in town. We also have the Desert Museum. The Desert Museum is very nice if you want to look for native wildlife here in Tucson. It's also got a nice little aquarium in it. We also have the Reed Park Zoo. We're members of the Reed Park Zoo. We go there fairly often. And most of the animals now are rescues that probably wouldn't have survived if they hadn't brought them into the zoo, which is, to me, the philosophy you need to have a zoo, in this millennia. There's also the Pima Air and Space Museum. It's fairly close to where we live. It's really great. It's got dozens of aircrafts from all sorts of things, from Air Force One to fighter jets to biplanes to helicopters. There's some big indoor venues, but there's also just a lot of outdoor airplanes you can walk around and take a look at. So summing up, Tucson is a great place to live if you can put up with some of the oddities of being in the middle of the desert, in a place where really humans don't belong.